Yep, you sure.
Has he already been ruled out of that back-to-back later this week, or are you going to wait to see how he comes out of tonight?
I don't want to say that he's definitely ruled out right now, but I think one of the things that the medical guys have tried to do is, okay, when this occurred again, the one difference was it was a back-to-back, so I think that will be something to see how he does tonight, and then probably, speak with him to find out what would be the best course of action. It's certainly on the table of him not playing the back-to-back. I will definitely say that, but I think they're going to probably see how he responds today.
And what kind of restriction is he on?
Probably about 24 minutes the most.
Thank you.
Would there be a kind of a rethought, reprocess of how to now handle him because there was a setback, or does he go back to the same ramp-up period he had after the left one and just take it from there?
Yeah, I think that it's a hard thing for the medical guys because I think when it does get tight, everything is fine. Like his strength is fine, there's no issue, and then ramping him back up prior to this game, everything came back fine. Right. So I don't know. Obviously it's happened a few times. I don't know if anybody can figure out why it happens. I do know the occurrence of hamstrings and calf injuries are reoccurring around the league. I don't think it's at a place where it's like, okay, this happened and now he's been set back for weeks. I think we're trying to eliminate that. But I think just trying to figure out what are the number of minutes that may potentially trigger it? What are the back-to-backs, the density of games? I think the medical guys are trying to take a deep dive into all that stuff and looking at, why does he get to this place that he gets to.
Are there any updates on the other players regarding Jaylen or?
So he's in concussion protocol right now. Zach's still going to be getting evaluated, by doctors. We'll probably have more, later in the week on that. Noah's obviously out. I'm just trying to think. Josh is hamstrings, so he's doing stuff on the court, but very, very little. He still feels it, so it's going to be a little bit of time before I think they actually let him start running and doing that. But he's progressing. He feels a lot better. But I do think there's times and things that he is doing that he can feel it.
The concussion protocol, can you take me through that? It's a series of tests that he has to go through and clear?
Yeah, I think one of the things that they're trying to do now with the concussions is they're actually trying to get guys up, moving and around. They kind of feel like that may be better in the recovery. But certainly there's procedures and hurdles he's got to cross before he can move to the next thing. So I don't know how long it will take. A lot of it's going to be predicated on his symptoms and how he's doing, and that's going to be up to the medical guys. I don't know. I think they've gotten away from this idea of it's a grade 1 concussion, 2. I think all concussions are concussions, and then they're just dealing it based on what the guy's symptoms are.
These stretches where he's being asked to step up some more with Josh and Kobe out?
Yeah, I think, for him, a lot of times because of, Josh and Kobe being out at the same time, there's been a lot falling on his shoulders from the standpoint that we haven't necessarily played two guards all the time. So I think getting us organized, getting us in and out of actions, recognizing what's going on, like those kind of things, where we can flow, well as a group, recognizing how we're being guarded, what they're doing, those kind of things. And then I think trying to help the group continue to play their identity. Obviously, he's very, very good in the open court. But I also think there's opportunities with the way he's shooting the basketball that I thought he turned down quite a few shots, in the game against Charlotte, and I think he needs to take those. So I think the decision-making on when to shoot, when to pass, when to drive, all that stuff needs to continue to get better. But like anything else, I think when you're dealing with, one guard out there that's the primary ball handler, a lot's going to fall on his shoulders because we're not in a position to have multiple guys, right? But as long I would evaluate his success by how is the group functioning when he's out there, more so than anything. Not that he's going to be responsible for guys missing and making shots, but the spacing, the organization, that kind of stuff, I would kind of evaluate it through that lens.
Where do you think his creativity is at this point in his career? I feel like that's kind of a hard thing to necessarily, you can't look at stats and be like, okay, this reflects necessarily how creative someone is. But how do you feel like
I think he's gotten much better off the dribble. Like he never took any off the dribble threes really his first year. He's gotten better shooting off the dribble a little bit. I think he needs to do more of that, in particular in pick and roll. I think the decision-making going downhill, when he does get there, he's really, really good. But obviously when there's a crowd there, making the next play, the easy play, recognizing how he's being guarded in particular, Are they going under? Are they going over? What's the big doing? Is the roll open? And he has shown that he can do that. Just like doing it consistently, I think, will be the big part for him. But again, I'm not looking at necessarily the metrics as much as you're watching film. Like to your point, how is the group flowing? What kind of decision making is he doing? Is he getting guys, shots when they're there? Is he finding the open man? Those kind of things.
Billy, how different is this Boston team when you watch the film from when they have Tatum to not having Tatum?
Well, I've said, when you lose great players, it's always going to impact your team. But, they've had very, very good personnel. I was very surprised early in the year where a lot of people had them picked. Got a lot of respect for Jaylen. He's obviously playing at it, probably an MVP level, at least in consideration. Pritchard, I've always had great respect for. White, the same thing. Hauser can really shoot it. They have a really, really good high IQ team, shooting team. I think the pickup of Simons coming off the bench has given them a lot of firepower. Tatum obviously, is elite offensively and can score a lot of different ways. But I think what happens is when you have a big time scorer that goes out like that, it doesn't necessarily fall just on one guy. Everybody kind of shares in that, so to speak. And they've been, all year long pretty elite offensively. They got the fourth best offense, and they share it. They play together, and I think they've got a really, really good high IQ. They've got guys that can play downhill and get to the rim. I think Garza have given them rim rollers. Garza's probably taking more threes than Keita is, but they have stretch guys all over the floor, so there's a lot of spacing there. And they've all been able to, pick up probably a certain part of what Tatum brought to the table.
How difficult is it to send help at a guy like Jaylen?
I'm sorry?
How difficult is it to send help at a guy like Jaylen, given some of that spacing that they have, even though it is personnel different?
Well, I think that's why they're a good team, because I think what ends up happening is, when you do try to take him out of the game, he is a willing passer. And, when he does move the ball or he gets off of it, generally what it's doing is it's putting another player in a closeout situation. And that player for them a lot of times is either a guy that can shoot it or can put it on the floor and create, and they have guys at positions that when the ball finds them, they can make the next play, and they're certainly capable enough to shoot it from behind the line.
Really playing to your pace is always such a point of emphasis and important for you guys, but is it extra important tonight given that the Celtics obviously play a little bit more in the half court and take a lot of threes?
Yeah, I think the other thing, too, that probably gets maybe missed with them just because their offense is good, and certainly they're an elite shooting team, and they take a lot of threes off the dribble and off the catch. But I think the one thing that's really underrated about them is the rebounding. They're a really, really good rebounding team, and, they generate a lot of points, and that really, really contributes to, if they're having an off night, let's say shooting, which is going to happen over 82 games, they're still been able to rely on the free throw line and been able to rely on the offensive rebounding. So identity-wise, we have to play the way we play, but the one thing I think part of the reason why they're such a good rebounding team, with the number of threes that going up, generally those are long rebounds, and Pritchard and White and even Jaylen, all those Hauser, they're all really, really good at coming up with those balls and generating extra possessions for themselves.
Is there any way you can prepare for that? Because it is a lot of crazy rebounds with long rebounds. Is it just a matter of boxing out and staying with your guy?
Well, I think the other thing, too, it's holding areas of the floor, right? Like a lot of times I think when people think rebound, they think a shot goes up and it's like man-on-man at the block or in the paint and guys are fighting. But what ends up happening is when the guys are on the perimeter, the worst thing you can do on a three-point shot is run into the paint, because the only one you're going to grab is going to end up being probably the one that goes in. But what ends up happening is when you remove space, so to speak, so if I'm guarding somebody and I run into the rim, that space between myself and the man now makes it a lot easier on those long rebounds to come down with those. So some of it on the perimeters, you got to hold boxes and elbows. Like your guys at the elbows have got to hold those spots, because that's generally where those shots are coming off. If the corner, maybe it goes, opposite, but those shots above the break, a lot of times they're coming out into the elbow areas, right? And if you have guards that go too far past the elbows, those are the ones they really do a great job coming up with.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.